Hello and welcome to this session. So today we'll look at the LLM capabilities and limitation. So it's important to understand what are the capabilities that the LLM has, and also there are some limitations as of now. So we need to also understand this, because what happens is sometimes we either underestimate AI or we overestimate AI. So both of these things are actually dangerous. So to be a good engineer, right, a good AI engineer, you must understand what LLMs are good at, what LLMs are not good at, where you have to use LLM, where you should not be using LLM. Okay, because modern LLMs are extremely powerful. So and they are getting more and more powerful. Lot of new models have been unleashed over the last few years. So it's at a point in time you may actually see that LLMs are actually doing a lot of the tasks than they are doing at this point. So they are growing at an exponential pace. But as of now, there are definitely some limitations that we can look at. Maybe in future also this limitation might still move, right? Okay, so first let's understand what LLMs are good at. So there are multiple different LLMs, right? Some LLMs are good at analyzing, some LLMs are good at writing code. So this is more of a generic, right? So we have LLMs which are very good at writing code. So whatever programming like ChatGPT is excellent in writing code. I have used ChatGPT. Claude is another thing which is amazing when you write the code, right? So these are excellent, okay? And some of the other things like Gemini also is good in some aspects, but not as good as ChatGPT and Claude at this point. But yes, AI LLMs can write code, they can summarize the document. So this is one very good important thing. So what you can do is, like, if you have like 100 documents or 100 pages of a document, right? So instead of just going through it, you just upload it and then ask the AI to summarize it, and it will summarize this for you. So this was also something which is good. And again, different models will summarize even differently, so you'll have to check that. Explain concepts, like if you want to learn something, like we did this project, right, the research analyst, right? So that is one area, right? You can just ask questions and the AI will explain you in a very good format. Like in that case, we actually give a very structured output. We say, hey, this is the first thing that we need to, then you need to explain this, you need to explain this. So they are very good in creating the structures. And we also created a project for generating emails, right? So you, based on the code, based on the tone, based on the professionalism, you can actually generate awesome emails. Okay, classifications, like, if you just give provide some of the data into it, like for example, you provide spam emails, right emails and everything, and the AI can classify. They are very good at that. So they can also analyze tests, give you insights of this. So these are all very good things that the AI can do for us. So they can do a lot of, and I have just explained a little bit of things, but there are obviously a lot more than we can do. But the point that I wanted to make here is, with understanding the capabilities, right? It's not like AI can do everything and then you just can rely on AI and just forget about things, right? So that's where the limitations comes into the picture. Okay, so now for us to understand the limitations, right? So let's look at what limitations we have, correct? So let me just put it in another page. So the limitations, right? One of the most important limitation the AI has, or the weakness that I would say, is hallucination. Okay, so you might have heard this term many times, even in this course, right? So, what does hallucination mean? So, hallucination means confidently generating incorrect information. So, let's put this: if you ask what is greater 3 and 5, right? 3 and 5, obviously 5 is great, right? But if the AI says 3 is greater, that means it is basically hallucinating. And again, why? Because it doesn't, it basically is on the training data that they have been provided, right? Different AIs might get different training, and also on the probability, right? The next probable information. So it's not, as I mentioned earlier, it's not the whole truth or the final truth. Is just that the prediction that happens, sometimes predictions fail, correct? So this is one thing that happens. Okay, so they are they generate probable test generation, and so it's always important that you validate, verify, test what the AI is generating before you actually deploy this, right? So there's one use case, or there's one a real world example. What happened is, some of you may already know this. So there's a lawyer who used ChatGPT generated legal references. So unfortunately what happened is, just ChatGPT generated something which were fake, and this guy actually got into a trouble for that with the judge. So it's always important. There's also one newspaper article that happened, like somebody wrote a great article with AI, but then somewhere down the line they forgot to actually check that the AI has actually put his own signature there, like, hey, this is generated by AI, something like that. So it is always important that all we use the AI because we want to, improve our productivity, do things faster. But at the end, whatever the data output that the AI provides, you need to validate, because AI can hallucinate. Okay, so that's one major thing that we have, right? And sometimes some AIs have a very weak math reliability. So I call this as weak math reliability. So what happens is, like, again, we found this in ChatGPT earlier, like, if you ask something like 2.99 and 3, actually picked up 2.9 and greater than 3, right? So sometimes there is an inconsistency, like if you ask 2.9 plus 2.9 plus 2.9, it would basically give some inconsistent results based on context. Now these things were there, and some of these things are no longer available here, like because models have been increasingly efficient nowadays. But yes, so these are some of the things that you need to also check, because not every model is fast, right? Not every model is same. So whatever model that you are using, you need to ensure that you validate it, right? So this is one. And the other thing is, like, there is no real understanding, right? So there is no real understanding. So what this means, okay, no real understand. Okay, so they sound very intelligent, right? AI, whatever you provide, they basically provide you something which sounds very much like humans. So they predict the patterns, they generate statistically likely responses. Okay, so let's say models basically produce fluent explanation, but sometimes, right, that logic is misunderstood, and it happens, like, they provide something which maybe because of, like, there's a cut of information, so the information that they provide may be outdated, so they don't have that thinking to actually understand, like, this is what happening, right? So you might find this issue in the lower models. I think the upper models, or the newly models, are actually going beyond this. And context is window limits. So we have context windows limit, context window limits. And again, you will find, like, some of these models will actually only accept a certain level of test, like for example 128K. So what this means is, when you're sending the information to the AI, you can only send this much of information. So I'm just taking one example. So larger conversations becomes more expensive, because you have to wrap it up into multiple calls. So there is a limit on these things, token and windows, sorry, context windows. And one important thing that I wanted to point out is prompt sensitivity. Okay, so when you provide a prompt, right? So if when you provide a prompt, okay, now based on how you present the prompt, your response may be slightly different. So if I explain something, if I ask something like, hey, explain AI simply, so it will give you some answers. But if I ask something like, explain AI, right? This thing might produce you different, and this thing might produce a different. Okay, so it's not relevant at this point, right? But what I'm trying to say is, like, you need to have, even if you just cut down one word or add one word, the output would differ. So it is very sensitive to the prompt. So that is where your prompting is very, very important. And there is no a strategy into this prompt. So you basically provide as much information as you can in a structured way, and just validate it, and then based on this you can go back and change the prompt, right? So this is important. So AI is not going to magically deliver everything to you, so you need to control a lot of things. Okay. And one other thing here is, let me just take it forward. Okay, so one more limitations that we have is, so AI models has they don't have access to the private or real private data. Okay, now this is good because they should not have the access to private data. So it's not in no means it's a disadvantageous. But the reason why I put this here is, like, you don't expect AI to know everything. So there are some things which the AI will not be able to know. They should be know, like your company information and all those things, right? So, but how do you can, but if say like you want to use AI in your company data, right? What you can do is you can basically train the AI on your data. So provide the AI. So RAG is an excellent example. So you provide the context, you provide the tools. So they would basically able to use this data, and so you can actually train your data with whatever that you want the AI to know. So this is one of the examples of the RAG, right? So these are basically some of the limitations that we have. So just to get through the mindset saying that, hey, AI knows everything, AI can do anything. AI is amazing. There are a lot of things that AI can do, but it can also do things which is not really accurate. So, and again, you cannot blame AI, right? Not everybody knows everything. Okay, so what we need to do is we basically need to, when we use the AI, so AI would generate an output. So you need to validate this output. Okay, so you need to validate this output and ensure that everything is right. And if it is not, then you go back and make necessary changes. Maybe you have to make changes to your prompt, or how you are handling your data and everything, right? So this is very, very important, right? So these are basically the capabilities and limitations. Most of you or some of you may already know this, so it's kind of a repeat, but I thought this is a very good topic for us to get introduced before we actually get into bigger projects. Okay, so yeah, so what I'll also do, okay, let me also just have you have one more thing here. So let's in some of the videos, we'll also provide you interview tips, like what the interview is going to ask and how you can answer this. So this is a good place to start. So one of the questions that even I ask and a lot of people ask, right, is what are the biggest limitations of AI? Okay, limitations of LLM. So this is an important interview question. So you could basically say that first, before we actually say limitations, right? So why limitations exist? Because they are they are based on probabilistic, right? Generate based on probables, right? So your training data may be wrong. So LLMs are probabilistic systems that can hallucinate, struggle with the deterministic reasoning, context lines. They require a very validation layers of productive. Sorry, they require validation layers for reliability, right? So we discussed that. I'm just putting it in one sentence, right? And all these limitations that we discussed, you can basically explain them here. So this is an important question. So there might be a follow-up questions and how you can do eliminate some of this. So we'll see those things in the future classes. All right, so that is all I have, and I'll see you guys in my next class.